We rolling?
Yeah, we rolling.
Hello.
Hey, welcome
Hello.
to the Sleepy Cabin Podcast.
Yeah, well, no, it's the Roundabout Cast,
Oh yeah.
which you can email at theroundaboutcast@gmail.com. What is that
Yeah.
email, Bradley?
It's roundabout the roundabout cast at
Yes.
gmail.com.
Yes.
I know it now.
Thought you were fucking with me. I was getting worried. Okay, well,
Yeah.
shit. I wrote here. So, our first topic today is going to be Game of Thrones, but I allotted 5 minutes before realizing Joe caught up to me. So,
Oh.
so we're going to do.
Here's what we'll do, Miller. The finale is next week.
Mhm.
So we can we can have our own 20-minute discussion about all of Game of Thrones because I have some thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And I think I've been listening to some other people on like podcasts, and they've kind of shared those same thought feelings that I've had from people that have read the books before or some of them. So which is vindicating for me, but in terms of overall Game of Thrones, I caught up. You know, I think for me around season 5 is when I kind of was like things just weren't as good as they were before, in my personal opinion.
See, I've gone on record to say that I really hate season 5, but I actually really like 6. I think 6 has a lot of good stuff.
6 has some good stuff. I agree. It's just like I enjoyed season 5 more. I thought it was a lot more of the formula and style that I like in Game of Thrones.
7,
But
7's fast, but I don't dislike 7. I still like it. There's a lot of good.
I stick by my solid 2 out of 5 rating for 7. I just
Season 8 though.
Right. So
Ugh.
let's just brief. I mean, we'll make this quick. We'll probably do it under 10. Just talking about episode 5.
yeah.
And we'll
So
talk
episode
around
5,
some things.
Yeah. So the big thing that everyone complains about, I feel like is complaining about. I really don't have complaints over than the fact that I feel like
Me neither.
just needed to be built up to more.
You know
Like, because
the big action scene of this episode?
yeah,
It went on for too long. What if they
I agree on that. It
cut
also
that
went on
back
for
by
too long.
15 minutes and character develop that choice more, you know? Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah, yeah. But like that choice has been foreshadowed and kind of foreseen, like forever.
I
Like
agree.
like you kind of knew her mindset about these things, and you could kind of always see the inkling of that in there, but you always hoped that that would never happen, and it did. And
I think some people really got attached to that character, and that's all I got to say about that, and that's why there's a lot of sadness.
yeah, I agree. I think if there was more time spent on that character to justify, not justify, but more of get into the thought process of that character's head, I think people would have been a lot more open to it.
I saw a cut of that scene where she makes the decision. You know the scene, like bells are ringing
Yeah,
and something happens. I saw a scene with some flashbacks interwoven in that shot, and it made it so much better. This is my problem with season 8 in general. Like, they're just not even trying. Like,
yeah, it's way too fast. Using the excuse of she forgot is kind of
Jesus. Bradley, there's this thing in Game of Thrones season 8 where it's like, what's a good analogy? Say like, say they're fighting Dio, and they find out his stand is time stop, and they're
And
like,
then they just forget.
and then they're like, Jotaro forgot that his stand is time stop, so that's why he got caught in this brutal attack, and he almost died for it.
Jesus.
It's that bad.
I will say though that one thing that the thing that she forgot, it has one additional thing I don't think they realized they had, but at the same time I don't think they would have been able to change the overall outcome of that. It would have stopped one thing from happening, but wouldn't have prevented the
Okay,
bigger kind of
would it? I
part.
mean, because she solos all of them, so
That's the other thing I have with
yep.
episode 5.
That's
It's
why.
like,
Okay, hold on. So I was saying they don't try, right? And so
Yeah.
Bradley, say there's a weapon in a TV show, and this
Okay.
weapon is shown to shoot 3 shots at a long distance, and they all hit. What does that tell you about this weapon and the people shooting it?
Uh, it's probably a really good weapon, or the people using it are really good at using it.
It would say it's pretty accurate, right? 3 shots at
Yeah.
a long distance, they all
Yeah.
hit. Interesting, because then the next episode, 25 people are shooting that weapon, and they all miss.
Oh my god.
So this is why I mean they're not even trying. If they wanted to
Yeah.
make that second part believable, all they needed to do was in the first part not make it 3 perfect shots, make it like a volley of shots, and some of them are lucky hits to show
I'm
that
a
it's not
confused.
accurate.
I don't understand why a show that's had such amazing direction for almost its entire run is having these problems now. Like, why are they doing their approach differently?
Honest,
because Bradley, themes are for 8th graders.
Is that what they said or
That's what they
something?
fucking
I've
said,
heard this
man.
phrase thrown around.
they said this like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
They said that?
Also, the writers wrote X-Men Origins, so just keep that in mind.
What's wrong with them?
Oh my goodness.
But so I will say for the reason for hitting it 3 times, I will say those shots came out of nowhere, like they were almost ambushed. But when you have a shotgun shooting, you're bound to hit at least once. You know?
Yeah, it's a spread
Right.
shot.
Yeah.
But no, gets
God, that makes me sad, and I'm not even.
But anyways,
what actually
I-
happened, Bradley. Your question is, I think they just don't care. They're trying to finish up so they can work on Star Wars. Like that's actually
I
it.
guess so.
Because season 7 suffered from some writing issues, but it still had some depth. It still had some stuff that only Game of Thrones can deliver. It still has really good characters. You know, it was just moving at a really fast
Yeah.
pace, and
But,
people
like,
are running all around the
really
country.
near the end of 7, it felt like very much just like, what is happening? Like, or there's the episode of Beyond the Wall.
That's the only one that's like, ugh.
Yeah, and like to me, like it's not so much of like the plot armor of that episode. That's like, okay, whatever. It's the actual plot of like the reason they have to do that episode. I'm like, that's so stupid.
It's
like
not that stupid.
it's kind of stupid.
It's
like,
a little bit. I'd give it a 10% rating of stupid.
But like it's just
Maybe 25.
like to me that doesn't seem like something those characters would do. Almost.
Well, it's a wake-up call, and it's the only kind of wake-up call that the other character would reciprocate to.
Maybe, yeah. But I will say I did like that scene that happens in the next episode where they're all having to sit down.
Yes.
And they're having a discussion.
That's
a good scene.
It's a scene that's been building up for a long time. Back to season 8 real quick. I agree with Joe. I actually thought they built up the reason why that event happened fairly well, a little bit too quick, but it's been built up for 8 seasons, and these last 4 episodes, each one have taken one more toe, one after the other, to lead to that choice. It wasn't out of nowhere. She even said why she did it in the beginning of the episode, so...
Yeah, but still, to me, like that character for the audience, they need to show a more reasonable why as to that character feels that way. I think there's only really one good scene, but it needed several other scenes to kind of back it up.
Yeah.
I feel.
Now, to speak of the negatives, that's the one thing of the episode. Ironically, the thing everyone's complaining about is the one thing I liked. I hated everything else.
Yeah.
I hated all the Northerners turning into just assholes. I hated Clegane Bowl was really dumb when I thought about it, even if it was hype.
Well, yeah.
You don't realize how dumb one of those characters is until you really see them.
Yeah.
That's some dumb shit.
I will say though, someone made a very good point about Clegane Bowl as like a metaphor, and I think it'd be better if we discuss that like later when we're doing a spoiler kind of talk about it.
Well, fire's
I'm like,
involved.
that's a good metaphor for that theme.
But other things, they wasted that one character's arc You know the one. Everyone knows the one. They just
I
come.
give me more hints here.
The
Who are you
arc who
talking
was
about?
most wasted in rocks fell.
Oh yeah,
I felt that character's arc was completely obliterated. Granted, like it's kind of realistic, but it's just not fun storytelling. You spent so much
but I
time.
also like kind of yeah. I'll have to discuss that later. I
Okay,
think because
what
I have some
else?
thoughts about it.
There
That's the
was
reason why they
there
don't
was
make
a
it satisfying.
character in this episode just because they're a fan favorite character and they need motivations for next episode, and it felt really forced.
Yeah.
Um, it was one sided. Fucking Euron is just complete waste.
Euron is the biggest mustache twirling villain in that show. It makes me upset.
Well, I don't know,
Although,
man. Walter
uh,
Frey exists, but then again, he had
no,
some.
no, no, but Walter Frey though, like there was a reason why he did those, and it kind of Walter Frey represents the how petty everyone is in that universe when they're in
Ramsey
a high
Bolton,
position of
then.
power. Hmm?
Ramsey Bolton, then. I'm sure there's others.
No, Ramsey's pretty good.
That guy
But
who
yeah,
fucked all his daughters, he's pretty bad. We can agree on that one. All right.
that's a real weird one.
Anything else to say? I'm ready to. We'll cover more next time.
Yeah.
I want to see the finale, and I
Yeah.
want to complain about it because I have thoughts and feelings. Because I
Maybe
feel like the way that show was like accumulating, or like the series was accumulating to, was kind of obvious from like book two, maybe even like especially like book three onwards. But like I feel like the people that were writing just really didn't care or really didn't see it. But yeah,
you had something to say, Bradley, even though you haven't
Yeah, this
watched.
whole the whole like reception to season eight's been weird to me because I think like you said, the directors, they're going to be working on the upcoming Star Wars or whatever, and I think they also got brought on to a few other projects as well in the future, and so maybe, like you said, they're just kind of ready to kind of transition to those other projects because they've been working on this for so long.
They've really never dropped the ball this hard, so something's got
It's
to
so
be
weird to
different.
me because like this is debatably what the thing they're most well known for, and it's like if this is going to be your legacy, why would you not try to finish it as strong as you possibly can?
Maybe they think Star Wars will be a better legacy, which is
I guess
fair. I
so.
think that's. Is that a bigger? Star Wars is bigger. It's got to
Star
be.
Wars
Star
is
Wars
the
is
Yeah.
bigger.
third biggest merchant. Is the
Well,
third
there we
biggest
go.
licensing thing in the world.
Yeah, Star Wars is
Um,
bigger.
yeah,
Uh,
I think it's behind Coca Cola and Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse is like number one.
So one last thing I say before we end the segment is if you named your daughter Khaleesi, I'm very sorry. Next up, we have me and Bradley finish Cuphead.
Oh man, it was a rough
Man,
evening.
what a fucking night we had. So, me and Bradley have been playing Cuphead on and off for like probably like 3 weeks now, right?
Something like that.
I think
Nearly a month.
we took like a week off, but
Yeah.
we've been meeting like once a week to make some progress. We went to watch a movie, which we will talk about later, and then we're like, okay, time to finish this game up. We had to fight the junkyard doctor.
Yeah.
Who else?
There was Dr. Wily.
Dr.
There was
Wily.
the train from Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, the train, and then we had the two final bosses.
Oh yeah, we did.
All right, Dr. Wily, tough boss, really cool. I like how he's Dr. Wily. That's what I got to
Man,
say about him.
I think that was the boss that Willer was like the most like of all the bosses in the game. That was the one where Willer's like, I don't know if we can do it, man.
I was pretty positive most of the time, but like, what was it? Which phase was it that just broke me? Like, first of all, his first phase is just really hard with the homing bombs, but
Oh yeah. I don't know what it was about that fight, but
you carried us that one for sure.
yeah,
Even
and
though I
then,
won
like,
solo.
it's kind of weird because there are kind of different boss fights like that, where like ones where I just cannot for the life of me stay alive past the first phase, and then there's other ones where it's like flip flopped.
Yeah. Next up, we had the Final Fantasy train, which Bradley was like, "Man, this is such a tough boss." We got
Yeah.
there. Did we beat it in 3 tries or something?
It was less than 5.
It
which was really
was
weird because I've beaten this game before, and I remember it taking like me and my roommates all night to beat this boss. And then I was like, "Oh man, Will, you don't even want to know, bro. Like this boss is gonna be so fucking hard." And then we got in there, we beat it in less than 5 tries. We're like, "Oh, okay, well,
turns out I did want to know. What helped was that Bradley knew how to operate the train that you're on in that
yeah, I
fight.
guess that probably helped a little bit."
So we knew to
Right.
equip Pea Sugar from the start, and then we were just from there was pretty easy. All right, King Dice. Holy shit!
Once Willer, once it dawned on Willer what this boss was going to be, you could see his like mind collapsing. Like, holy shit, this is all so cool and terrifying.
My admiration and fear were very palpable. I was making noises that didn't even make sense at the time.
Which
It was quite the experience.
I don't know if we talk about what the boss actually is. I don't know if Joe's ever seen it,
I
Yeah,
haven't
Joe, what do
seen
you
it at all.
think? We're not gonna talk about it then.
or for any viewers who haven't played the game, because holy shit, jumping into that boss fight for the first time and the second time and probably even the third time is like, holy
Because
shit.
you're gonna complete phase one of that boss, and I think it won't dawn on you what the boss is until phase two.
Yeah.
And the round we won, we even got the bad phase where you have to redo a lot of stuff, and we still managed to win, and it was a very clutch win, if I do say so. I had parried his really hard card attack twice, back to back, and just it was. Oh, that's a
Yeah, you
satisfying
really
boss.
carried us in that last phase.
It's yeah, but like there is some phases of that boss that like we were like, yeah, we like this one, and then there's some phases of that boss that we just dreaded with all of our being. Talking to you, phase six.
Ugh.
Ugh.
Fuck that shit.
Finally, we fought the devil himself.
Oh man. And I even told Willer going into this one that like the first time I played through the game, this was the boss that like even after I beat it, I like wasn't even happy because like most bosses in this game, even if it's one of my less favorite bosses or if I'm just getting my ass kicked, I'm usually still having fun getting my ass kicked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like by the time I beat the devil, I'm just like I'm so glad this is over. And like it's not that the devil feels unfair. Like all of his attacks are telegraphed. You can see where they're coming. You can
Mm-hmm.
dodge them. He's beatable. He's just that fucking hard.
He was the hardest boss in the game. We died. What was it like 200 something times?
209 times.
It
A
was
number I will remember.
more than Matchstick, which was like 183 or
Yeah.
something.
By the end of the night, and it might be a combination of being tired and also being drunk.
Yeah.
I ended up dropping out and just watching Willard fight him, and I was like, "Oh, you're doing good."
I was like, God damn it, this is so hard. Your supers do a lot more. I feel like when you're alone, so that helped.
It was funny though because I feel like within the first 10 tries, we got to the Devil's Last phase once, and then it probably took like 100 plus tries before we got to the last phase again.
That first phase is insane. The hoof attack is like almost frame perfect.
It really is.
The one where he shoots little flames, I was really good at dodging it alone because they all home in on you. But when they home in, we found out later that they alternate who they home in on. It's really hard. With the eggs, it took me a while to find out you can stay in the middle to dodge them, or the orbs or whatever. What else does he have? The snake wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
eggs.
Okay, the spider move. Fucking Bradley.
It's his easiest attack to dodge, but I probably got hit more on that attack than any other attack.
I don't get mad easily at my co-op partners, but fucking Bradley pushed me. Plus, he was cracking jokes while I was getting frustrated. I was like, God damn it. Very tough phase. On the other phases though, I realized that he attacks on a set pattern. With like he has an attack where he's dropping something on you, and I realized it's a linear pattern for that attack. And once we got that, we were able to do a lot better. And God, that last phase,
Stressful.
stress.
But in the end, I was about to say we triumphed. It was more like Willard triumphed.
Oh, you were there. That counts.
And I have the same feeling that I had after the first time I beat this game. I'm like, man, that was a really cool, fun, creative game. I never want to play it again.
Yeah, I'm considering buying it for myself, but like I'm not. Why would I? Why would I torture myself again?
It's the
It's
most
pretty
fun
difficult
game that I
alone.
don't want to play multiple times
Yeah,
because I don't want to do that to myself again. But let it be known, it's awesome.
I can't imagine beating some of those bosses alone without you. Like, oh,
Or
man.
let alone on expert mode, because there's a
Well,
harder difficulty than what we did.
like I actually need you to beat Callie Marie for me. That last phase only you can do. Stuff
But
like that.
I just think like the biggest strength with Cuphead is its awesome bosses. Like I think some of the most famous ones, and I think definitely some of our favorites are like
My girl Sally.
Sally Stage Play, Hildeberg, King
Whew.
Dice. Like these are just
Even
the
even the
some of the
devil's
most
respectful.
amazing designs and
Yeah.
some of the most amazing bosses.
Blue Blob is a fan favorite of ours. Just
Love him.
um, the genie's cool.
Pretty much any boss except the bee.
Yeah, we're not a fan of the bee.
I'm at the B.
I'm sorry,
Like,
Fuck the
Joe.
bee, man.
Stay in
I
the
have
top
to.
corners to dodge the stupid cop phase, and then you pray for the rest. Um, I'll give Cuphead a rating here. I'm gonna give it a 4.5, and only because I do not like the run and guns at all. If those weren't in the game or they were replaced by like another mechanic of getting coins, this game is straight up a 5. It's this
Yeah,
that good.
If there were all the ghosts, I would be happy.
The ghost is fun, or like maybe make them challenges where like beat the bee with a roundabout, or use lob to beat the genie guy. He's a plain
Something like
level,
that.
so that doesn't make sense. But you know,
You know what you
Um,
mean.
Next time I play Cuphead will probably be when the DLC drops.
yeah,
New bosses,
new
new
character.
character, maybe new weapons. I don't know if that's a thing.
That'd be nice. Roundabout carried me the whole game.
Yeah, that was your go-to.
Bradley's
I
a
was
charge
mostly
shot
charge
boy.
shot.
Yeah. All right, that's Cuphead.
Cuphead, fun game. Everyone should
the
at least
head
try
roll.
it.
Great game. We'll probably hear a little more if Joe ever beats it. Okay. Next up, this week I watched Attack on Titan season 2. Season 3 is currently airing, but I just never got around to season 2 for some reason. Even though it was definitely in the plans. And I watched the entire season in like 2 days because it was only 12 episodes and it was that gripping. So I wrote some notes so I could do this in a timely manner. So just to preface, I don't think Joe has ever watched Attack on Titan. Oh God, why would you do this to us?
I tried to mute my mic
You
and
did
I
it.
saw that the light did not turn off, and I was like, "Oh no, they're gonna hate me."
Oh man. Well, you just made our whole audience deaf. So
I'm so sorry.
all three people out there, you can
You
sue
bleep
Bradley.
it like it's a curse word.
Beep. Okay, so Joe hasn't watched Attack on Titan, as far as I know.
I've seen the first season. I have
Okay.
not seen anything past it.
Okay, so he's watched a lot of Attack on Titan. I lied.
I mean, I also read a decent bit of Attack on Titan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah.
Bradley.
I don't remember any of it.
Bradley watched 4 episodes, which, as anyone who has watched the show is kicking themselves at the thought that he didn't watch one more episode. He really should at some point.
Yeah, we'll see. Like, I tried watching the first 4 episodes or so, and I tried reading about that far in the manga, and I heard so many people like, "Oh, dude, like, even from episode 1, like, holy shit, this is the coolest thing ever." And this was even back when it took a lot less for an anime to impress me, and I don't know, it just wasn't clicking with me. I hear it's the coolest thing ever. I don't anticipate revisiting it soon, but I don't know, maybe eventually.
So I will say the reason why I jumped off the bandwagon for it was, it just felt like they were piling stacks and stacks and stacks of just mystery on top of itself, and just kind of holding off from.
Ooh, boy, I got a
Anything?
season 2 for you. That's the best part of season 2 is how much shit is answered.
I don't know because because the thing is, like, if I remember correctly of what I read in season, that should be most of what season 2 was, and it was just like mysteries on top of itself, and it's just like,
They pretty much told you how Titans, where they come from, which is like the biggest mystery.
Yeah, it's when
And
a mommy Titan and a daddy Titan
well,
love
they
each
don't
other
have
very much.
genitalia, so doesn't work for them.
So I guess then like
They
I didn't read that far,
no, the
but
thing
like
is
I
they're
read for like a solid
restructuring.
like year, and I like past season one when I started right where season one ended and kept reading for like another like year, and that never got answered for me unless I'm
So
miss.
this is
Yeah.
an anime thing where the manga moves at a terrible pace from what I've heard, and is just
Mm.
overall not a great read sometimes. But what the anime does is it restructures stuff where it puts flashbacks and like stuff way ahead and just straight up answers some questions. And even the ending was a spoiler for even manga readers at the time, where they're like, "Hey, like the show ending, the ED as it's called, had like
Yeah.
spoilers for even manga readers." So like that
You
they're
know what?
really fixing some stuff.
That's actually a really interesting thing with Attack on Titan because I feel like for almost every anime ever, the people who read the manga will be like, "Oh, dude, you got to read the manga; it's so much better." But I don't know if I've ever heard that sentiment for Attack on Titan. People are like, "No,
I've
the anime is awesome."
I've heard it a little bit. It's just, the anime's too good, man. It's hard to pass up.
I might jump on season two because I remember reading the manga and being like, this is good, but it's also just
You
slow.
got to the point where they revealed Colossal and Armor Titan, right? Because that's
Yeah, I know who those are.
they
I got
formally
that
revealed
far.
it, right? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll talk about that a
but
little
like
later.
um, I don't remember. Like it just felt like things were just kept on being introduced and at a pace where like there's not enough other payoffs. Like One Piece does this where like it introduces some things, but
It'll
like it also like reveals or like explains other things previously at a reason. There's like a good stagger, you know.
okay. Uh, to get to, I was gonna say about Bradley's point. I think it's bad at the start, so I reject both of those things you've heard a lot of. Maybe it was an earlier time, but I don't think it starts particularly well. I hate the school life vibe that like it kind of has. It's very
Yeah,
different.
that's probably one of the things that threw me off.
It's more military training
Yeah,
vibe. That goes out
it
of the
really
way
is.
pretty quick. I'd say like
Mhm.
midway through season one.
Oh yeah,
God,
yeah,
even I think like even episode 9, it's probably gone by then. When the main
episode
character,
9.
like episode 9, where that's around the time where Eren starts doing things, right? Because that I feel like that's when that aspect kind of peters
Oh,
off a little bit.
I was thinking more of the when they have to like when they finally get their positions and they're on the wall and things start going down. And then like really like between the first episode, which is kind of like a prequel prologue episode, and the next Titan attack, that area is just kind of character introductions for like 2 or 3 episodes, and then like, all right, now we're gonna start the story.
Yeah,
That's what it feels like.
yeah. And then I also don't think it's the greatest thing ever, like some people said. So just to measure, but all right, I get to finally out of the way. I get to talk about season 2. Um, so season 1 has I'm going to talk about season 2. So season 1 has a really strong second half. The arc that plays out in the second half is genuinely like 5 out of 5. But because of the first half, I'd probably give it like evens out to a 4 out of 5, right? Everything in season 2 I loved. So just off the bat, the opening and the ending, always great as always. Especially that ending, man. It gives you such a creepy vibe. Definitely worth watching, even if you don't watch anything else, just to get your mind racing a little bit. The imagery they show is really interesting.
I'll say the music from Attack on Titan, even from someone who doesn't really watch it, it's pretty easily recognizable. I hear it all the time. People put it over just about anything.
The while we're talking about that, just production value wise, Attack on Titan might be one of the best animated series out there right now. I'm sure there's some other stuff that I don't know, but just Attack on Titan's animation is fucking stellar, dude. I should show you some clips later. They go all out, and it really that it's just a joy to watch the action scenes. And the production values with like music playing in certain scenes, like emotional scenes, like also really works really well. So season 2 from the get go has a really good setup where there's this mystery where there's titans inside one of the layers of the wall, but they can't find a hole that they breached from. And the whole season kind of revolves around what happened here, as well as answering some of the mysteries that started at the very end of season one. Um, and all of that gets covered. Talked about the animation. Ta-ta. So there's a new enemy introduced in this season. Joe, you would know him. Harry
Monkey
Boy.
Man.
Yeah. He has a really good entrance, and it just shifts the tone of the series like immediately. I feel with him, and
He like he comes up and just like crushes a titan or something, if I remember correctly.
he kills a pretty like this series is worse than Game of Thrones at killing people. Like no one is safe except for like the obvious plot armored 4 or 5 characters. Aside from that, everyone you love is gonna die at some point. It's very soul crushing. Um, so my problem with Attack on Titan has always kind of been the characters and the tone, and the tone of Attack on Titan that really bothers me is that it's overly dark and edgy sometimes. I'd probably use the word edgy a lot. Where
That was another thing that kind of turned me off is that like
absolutely, yeah.
it's very gloomy.
Yeah, gloomy. That's a good word too. It's just like every character needs to have a dark turn. Like everyone needs to be kind of an anti-hero. This is
It feels very grimdark.
yeah.
And like I've told this before, but I think grimdark is better used as like a satire material than is a setting. As someone who plays Warhammer,
Yeah, Joe was explaining that the other day, and I think he had a really good point.
because it's just like it's very hard to write about characters when they're in a world that you know cannot change, and it becomes very futile to root, and it becomes like, well, why would I root for these characters? I think the
Yeah.
one that in like Game of Thrones, like the books at least teeter very much on the edge of that.
I don't think they do. Like it's
I don't
it's
think
very
it's grimdark
neutral.
either, but it gets pretty close
Yeah.
sometimes. But yeah, it's just Attack on Titan, like especially like when you're really introduced to the show, you're like, oh wow, everything's just fucked, like from inside and out. Like
Right.
there's shit going on inside the walls, and there's shit going on outside the walls, and like there's no really big hope for the characters in this.
It's
And
not a fully hopeless situation, but it is such a grim one.
Yeah.
It's some people are into that, and it also makes sense. But like, it gets so obnoxious sometimes, where like you really just roll your eye at the darkness of it all. Where it's
Yeah.
like, I like me some dark characters, but when everyone has to kind of take that turn, and the whole setting is in that field, I kind of have to roll my eyes at it.
And yeah, it's really it's funny because like the only way you can tell something's really dark is when there's something light next to it. But if there's nothing like next to it that's kind of like light, like there's no funny moments, nothing to break that tension, like then you're just kind of like, oh well, everything's at a tense point, so it really doesn't matter.
And
Yeah.
like Attack on Titan tries, it has some really sweet like good-hearted characters, but even they're all gonna go down a dark path. It's starting to get pretty obvious from where I am.
Also, it seems like a lot of times nowadays, a lot of people don't like the like goody two shoes. Like I don't know, just like someone who's just a genuinely good person, like a Superman or a Peter Parker or something.
Cap.
People. It seems like the trend nowadays is people like it when everybody kind of has that more darker side or whatever. But if your story has none of those people who are just like just genuinely good people,
Or
I
someone
think
that like sets the standard of what a good person is.
yeah, it'll kind of fall into that. Okay, well, things are just horrible, and sometimes it doesn't feel like there's any hope they'll get better.
And
Which some
Attack on
people like
Titan
that,
kind of
but
tries.
I mean, hey.
So okay. This is a problem. One of the examples I was going to bring up is like this girl's about to die, and just out of nowhere she's like, "No, Daddy, don't beat me!" And it's like, oh, she was abused as a child. This didn't add anything to her character. She was all.
It just happens that one time.
It just happens that one time, so that the death can be more horrifying. And it's just like, ugh, there's so much. Like every once in a while, the show will sneak that in. But okay, season 2 in general though handles all of that a lot better. I hate the main character, and he's a lot better in season 2. He's a lot more tempered with his fucking annoying ass piece of shit personality. um,
Super stupid.
the show is carried by a character named Armin for me. I'm pretty much in it for him, basically, character wise, because he's the least edgy of the group, though he's definitely going like. I can already predict his character path in season 3, and like I'm not gonna like him by the end of season 3. But for where I am right now, he's like a great character, and he's the tactician of the group, and he's really smart, and he's less edgy than the rest. As much as I hate Eren, I think I hate Mikasa even more. I think she's fucking garbage. Even if she has cool moments, a lot of people won't like me saying that because she's actually a big fan favorite.
She
I
has
just
some really cool action moments.
oh,
But
she's badass for sure.
but she has some very Mary Sue moments, like reflecting on it. Like it's just like she's like one of like 2 or 3 people in the entire series that can like uh oh god, consistently kill a Titan like without any help, and she's able to do it like right as soon as she graduates, and you're just like, okay.
I mean, she's badass, but that's not she's not much of a character. All she cares
Yeah.
about is Eren and kind of Armin a little bit, but really all she cares about is Eren, and it gets so obnoxious. She's so one note.
The
Ugh.
classic anime trope about
Yeah. I love my
yeah.
boy. Okay. Moving on. There's this amazing because we're already over the time limit I thought I would go for my notes cuz um so season 2 has one of the best twist reveals I've ever seen in anything where there's just some people talking and they drop the biggest mystery of the series. They're just like, "Hey, here's the answer to this mystery that the whole season, the
I think
whole
I know what you're talking about because I remember reading the manga and like I'm reading through it and then I flip the page. I'm like, hold on, and I had to go back.
you
Like
had
they
to do a
just
double take because it was
yeah
that nonchalant." And
yeah.
this other character involved, he's like, "Are we seriously doing this right now?" It
Yeah.
was
Like
it
what are you
was
doing?
absolutely perfect. But what's really good about Attack on Titan's mysteries is one, they have the One Piece style where like they're really well planned out early ahead. Maybe they're not done to the expertise that Oda does it, but you can tell this is a guy who knows what he's doing with his mysteries because you go back, there's so many hints to that reveal. It's actually really interesting.
Like the first, I think season 1 has like the first kind of reveal about a Titan,
Yes.
and like going back, you can go like, oh wow, yeah, that makes sense. Like
This
you can like
this season
just
2
by the
reveal
animations of
ties
it.
into that too. Oh
Yeah.
wow, yeah, the animations, I remember that. Um and it's just what's really nice about the mysteries is like whenever you're ahead of the mystery, you're like, I hope they catch up. And they do catch up, but then they also reveal that when they caught up, they were ahead of you and they thought of stuff that you didn't even think about, and they're already on top of handling that stuff. And it makes you outsmart the show, and then the show also outsmarts you, and it's pretty organic with all that. It's one of my favorite aspects of it is the plot and the mystery. Um, there's a really cool fight midway through the season. A lot of karate moves are thrown. Really good shit. There's a line that goes, "I don't think anyone in history has done something as bad as you," and it's such a powerful line because it's so true, and the things that this character that the line is directed to have done are so disgusting, but um it's not in an edgy way like a lot of the show happens to be. It's a really interesting. He's one of the characters that I really like in the show. If I had to pick like characters I actually like out of the whole bunch, Armin would be first. There's a character called Erwin who is just he's probably the closest you get to your shining beacon of hope and justice. They're the Colossal and Armor Titans are really interesting characters. And then Annie and Ymir. Ymir? I don't know how to say her name, but they're also pretty
Ymir.
cool. Ymir. That's all I got for season 2. That's an easy 5 out of 5. I really like the season.
I might pick it up again because I think the biggest thing for me was that I felt like you said before, the manga was just moving at such a slow pace. I felt like nothing was getting resolved,
Hmm.
and like I can understand like things not getting resolved for a while, but there's you have to keep interest in some way. But if they fix that in terms of pacing, then I might
From what I
kick
hear,
it
for
up.
sure. Like, I can almost definitively tell you exactly where Titans come from and all the implications of what's going on behind that. It like they pretty much go ahead of time and tell you all these things.
Yeah, like yeah.
So I started season 3 as well. I only watched 2 or 3 episodes. I'm already liking this one less. Because first of all, there's a subplot where a character can't use their power, like Spider-Man 2, except Spider-Man 2 is a good movie throughout it all, but that's one of my least favorite tropes. And the series has moved on from apocalyptic mysteries to human politic interactions. And it's not quite, because I'm not invested in the characters, I think it's not quite that engaging, but I think it won't be super bad as long as it ties into the mysteries well, which I think it
Super
will.
bad.
Super bad. That's all I got. Let's wrap this up. Uh,
Yeah.
Next up, we got.
I'm so fat.
What? Wait, was that a line in the movie?
No, I just look and feel fat today.
Joe. Joe, should the next segment be like make Joe feel a little better?
No, our
Segment.
next segment is Detective Pikachu
But
because I
we.
fear fear, and I know others fear fear, but I don't fear fear.
Woo! That's a fucking line. Joe, we love you, by the way, so don't feel bad. But okay, let's talk about Detective Pikachu, a movie that we all watched.
But like separately. At
Yes.
least me.
Well, I watched it with Bradley.
Yeah, and I've watched it twice.
You watched it twice?
I watched it twice. I watched it once with Willer and then again the weekend after.
Oh, that's right. I don't remember if you told us if you liked it less or more or the same.
He said the same.
It was about the same.
Okay.
Okay.
It
I
didn't really get much better.
I don't have much to say for this movie, like
Oh, I got some
out of
things to
personal things to say. So I'm just gonna say my points real quick, and it's one. If you're a big Pokemon fan slash nerd like myself, you actually run into the chance of liking this movie a little bit less than your average viewer.
Really?
I feel like you do. Because I become an asshole where I'm like, Ninja can't be hit by psychic moves. He's dark
Oh, yeah.
type, ugh! And then like, just
True.
dumb shit like, I don't know, just you run into like little things like that, or like these giant Torterras are in the world. If they've walked, like they would just destroy all of civilization.
But
But
I actually really like that.
oh, that's the best scene in the movie. It's
They
just
looked so cool.
the implications of it. But overall, I thought the plot wasn't that interesting. The main human character is just okay. He's an okay actor. The girl is a really weird actress. I feel like they told her to be like a mysterious film noir kind of like detective lady, and she didn't really quite get it. Or the directing was just bad.
Yeah.
The main problem I have with this movie is the core of the movie is Detective Pikachu, and about 80% of the things he said I didn't like. So when the whole draw of your movie kind of annoys me most of the time. Also, I guess the plot, like second zero, I turn to Brad and I'm like, oh, by the way, spoiler. And then Bradley laughed at me, and then midway through the movie, he's like, oh. Yeah, so I had a lot of time watching the Pokemon in the wild. I'd give the movie a solid. I'll give it an optimistic 3 out of 5 because just I loved watching the Pokemon, and I want more of these movies. Even though this is a 3 of 5, if they're all 3 out of 5s, I still want more. I want more kinds of stories told in this world. Also, I didn't like how the city was a no battle city. Okay, that's
I was
all.
exactly the same way. I rate it 3 out of 5, and that's mostly at that score just because I just love looking at Pokemon. They're just so fun. If I was like removed from the Pokemon aspect and I'm just looking at the story, it would probably be like 1 or 1.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
It's not a great story, but if you just love looking at Pokemon, you'll probably have fun watching it.
And boy, do I like looking at Pokemon.
I love looking at Pokemon.
I
Yeah.
every time there'd be a new one, I would instinctively, like without thinking, turn to Bradley and be like, "Oh, there's Purloin," or "Oh, there's
You know what? Second time around, saw some Pokemon I didn't see the first time, like
yo."
Togepi, who looked awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Togepi's in the cage match area.
Yeah.
There was also some, which was weird. Uh, there's also some like Togepi decor on like the buildings. Also have some Pokemon style names and
Really?
decors they only pick up if you're really paying attention.
I think I give it a 2.75 out of 5. Mainly
Coward score.
coward score. Fine, it's a 2.
Damn. Well,
Um,
give it a 2.5.
Yeah, but but I also feel like I also kind of maybe enjoyed it more than y'all, but at the same time, I
Wait.
kind of like I know it's weird, but
Yeah.
like
Well, I guess it's an objective score versus an
yeah,
enjoyment and
objectively, I
like a
give it
mix
like a
of it.
2, but like in terms of like, oh, I enjoyed that. I think I enjoyed it more than y'all. I feel like a lot of this movie, like its problems come in its editing and its storyboard and its pacing. Because I feel like there were scenes that gave information like, well, it's more interesting if you do things in like a different order, if you do present them in a different kind of way. That there are some action scenes that could have had a lot more interaction between like Detective Pikachu and the human component. Uh, the girl actress was
We don't.
absolute
We didn't even call him a
trash.
boy. We just call him a component, which is
Yeah.
telling.
But like, uh, but there were some like interesting things that I really enjoyed too. Like I liked, um, and that's it.
Wait, did you
No,
intentionally take a pause there?
no, so really, there were some clever moments in the film, um, but I also just kind of felt like, well, like this is kind of uninspired or very kind of choppy and weird, or you're not really selling me on like a mystery kind of thing. I think the biggest thing for me that made me want to bash my head against the wall the entire time was they their first instinct was not to go back to like the original crime scene. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, that's where
And
you started a detective story.
yeah, and like I'm just like, why aren't you starting here? Like you don't like it's okay if they get there and they don't know that other like place is down the road because it's supposed to be like a secret location. So it's okay if they get there and they're like, why are they here? Blah blah blah, blah and why this happened, and that adds the mystery to it. And then you kind of there was no parts that it as a detective film, this is a terrible detective film because there's
Yeah.
no moment when they're piecing things together to like figure out what happened. It's only revealed at the end. And you're just like, oh,
And he got kind of lucky because he goes in the office and it's revealed to him then. And Detective Pikachu finds out. I forgot how he found out, but it was also bullshit. I think was given a vision.
yeah, that Pokemon gave him a vision. You're like, oh, okay,
That's a engaging mystery story here.
yeah.
I really liked when Pikachu sang that thing and everyone in the audience cheered, and I was like, ugh.
I don't think I was there for that.
He sang a thing, and me and Bradley looked at each other, we're like, ugh.
Yeah.
This ain't it,
What-
Chief.
I don't remember the thing.
That's when I mean it's like the more of a Pokemon fan you are, the more likely you are to be annoyed. One thing I really liked is I was really worried this was going to be really Gen 1 focused.
Yeah,
And while it was Gen 1 leaning, it also had so many nice deep picks. Like Loudred was a big part of this movie. And
dude,
like,
they were sweet.
They were awesome.
they-
I was really glad that they picked Pokemon from like pretty much every gen.
Yeah, that was one thing
Pangoro
I
got
really
like
like is that you could see moments where the Pokemon actually like were part of the society in some way. Like the Loudred, when you see them, they're like making beatboxes and making the sounds with their mouth. Like the music system in this cage match area. It's awesome.
the Torterras and the Greninjas. They were the best scene in the movie.
My hope
Yeah.
is that people who pretty much only played Gen 1 and 2 might like walk out of the movie and go like, "Oh man, that panda Pokemon was really cool. I kind of want to use him in a game. Maybe I'll go
And
play one of the new games."
Panda mom that was upset about her kids running around everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of fletchlings in the movie, like just a lot of good picks. But
There were
I-
like 30 different of the purple cat things with the steel type with the claws. You know what I'm talking about?
Uh, Sneasel?
I think so. Yeah, like that one. Like for
They're
sure, I
not
saw
steel
like the,
type, you doofus. They're dark ice. Yeah, sneeze. Yeah, there was some good sneasels in there.
there was a
Uh,
bunch of them. Like there's the scene at the end where something happens and everyone stands back up. There's like
yes.
there's like 12 of them on screen. And
I'm
it's
so
like
happy they used Bufalon instead of Tauros. Like, it would have been
yeah,
such an easy pick to go for Tauros, but they're like, you know what? Let's represent a little bit.
yeah,
The Pokemon Company was involved with this film, so you can see that they really tried for it. At one point, Pikachu is like, "This Pokemon isn't known to do this," and he uses it to like solve a mystery. I forgot what exactly it was, but like he says something where it's like he knows Pikachu knows Pokemon lore, and they're using it
hmm
to solve the mystery. It's like, oh, this is nice. They kind of know what they're talking about.
yeah. Like and I think I wanted more of that, where like there was
Yeah.
where like the Pikachu really knew about like Pokemon, or one of them was like really Pokemon expert.
Hmm.
Like in terms of its lore, like that really should have been the dynamic, because that's kind of introduced where like the kid really wanted to be a Pokemon trainer when he grew up, but he decided not to because he's a baby. Um, so and it'd been really cool if like Pikachu was like, he knew all like the lore uh the lore things about the Pokemon, and then he knew about like the battle mechanics of the Pokemon. So you have this yin and yang of like Pokemon games. This I don't know,
There
man.
was one
But
point where he's like, "Hey, Volt Tackle would knock me out." I was like, "Hey, that's accurate. I like
yeah,
that."
like
Um,
yeah,
I thought all the action scenes were actually pretty lame. I
I agree. They were very very
they're
lame.
so safe. Nothing. They were like Pokemon, the bad Pokemon anime episodes, that kind of battling.
Yeah, I I was so disappointed in a cage match kind of thing.
Yes, it was
Like
not great.
that was so much potential for you to like have like in terms of them learning to work together, and you're just
Hmm.
like, nah, we're just gonna.
The fact that this movie takes place in a city where battles can't. I hope next movie is a little more battle focused. That's
Yeah,
all.
like one of my favorite parts of the movie was like the first 5 minutes where we're in the countryside and you see Pokemon running around in the wild and they go to catch one. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. You get to like see Pokemon and they're catching one.
It
And
was
then
delightful.
we don't really get to see that the rest of the movie.
Deliberately, they are in a region with no wild Pokemon, and me and Bradley walked out, and we were kind of like, I kind of wanted to see Pokemon in the wild. Like, I wanted to see a giraffe egg eating out of like a tree or something.
Hmm.
Yeah. One thing I will say, and this is kind of another topic. The second time I watched the movie, like the first time I watched the movie, I was just like, oh my God, Pokemon. Second time I watched the movie, I was kind of thinking more about the story and stuff. And I think the thing that I like the least is, so our movie has a few side characters. Obviously, we spend the most of the time focusing on our main guy and Detective Pikachu because they're who the story is about. But we have a few side characters. We have the girl. I don't know if you'd call her sidekick. We kind of have the detective that worked with Harry, the boy's dad. And then we have like the main villain, obviously. So we have a few side characters, but what's weird to me is that I think they want you to care about these characters more than you possibly can for the amount of time they're in the movie.
Yeah.
Because the detective shows up in exactly two scenes.
Hmm.
Main villain shows up 3 times in the movie. Um, Even the girl shows up like briefly at the beginning. She kind of has a longer section in the middle, and then she's also around at the end.
No, she
Uh,
disappeared at the end because she's part of that whole.
yeah, that's the thing is like she ran off, and then I
Yeah.
I guess like the last time you see her, and this is I wouldn't even really call this a spoiler. It's not going to ruin anything. She's like, "Oh, I did it. I'm finally like a fully fledged reporter." And
Yeah.
it's clear they want you to care, but I don't know how anyone really could because we just don't really see her that much.
I gave
Yeah.
like a forceful yay, just 'cause
Yeah.
yeah, good for
Facts.
her.
So I don't know. Like
Fear is fear, and
obviously
I don't want fear.
the story's about our main two dudes. So I guess we don't want to detract from that and spend too much time on the side characters.
But you
But
shouldn't like you shouldn't have any kind of want to make emotional payoffs for those side characters.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah,
um like I think Phoenix Wright does this the best, where there are parts where you do investigations, and there are some characters that carry over to the next game,
Hmm.
and you talk to them, and they talk about like, oh, I got the reporting job, or now I'm a forensic scientist. Like,
God, that's the best. That one in particular, that
yeah.
made me very happy.
But like the thing is like, because you don't and really you never spend more than one case with characters other than the prosecutors and the detectives in that game. But like seeing these faces show up again as like other kind of characters later down the line is a lot more fulfilling than having them immediately paid off in the
It
same span.
it's a bunch of, yeah, it's a bunch of like small cameos, not cameos, but small roles that build up to a character arc that you don't spend much time in, but you're emotionally invested. This
Mm-hmm.
is like a small role where she gets her full character arc and development within
Mm-hmm. Like
the
you
bounds of the
want
movie.
that character to like have a really hard mark when you first good impression when you meet them, and then when you meet them again later and you see there's some progression, you're like, oh, I'm glad they got somewhere, or that it feels like they're an actual character or a living character
Hmm.
in that universe, even if we
Um,
don't see what actually that is.
Another thing I wanted to say is that there's a certain office in this movie that has some statues.
Oh
That shit
yeah.
was rad.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to say.
That whole office looked kind of awesome. And they also had like identifiable Pokemon items, like they look exactly like the sprite would look in your inventory, which I
Mm-hmm.
thought was
Ooh.
very cool.
The last thing I want to say before I want to transition into ending statements. The credits of this movie were better than the movie, and it's not. Again, I like the movie. It had its problems. I want more of these movies, but
But God, the credits were so good
those
looking.
credits
I had
blew
my
me
bladder
away.
turn and explode, and I couldn't sit through all of them, but they were cool.
Um, they were everything I wanted. Like those hit me because it's like, okay, we're using the sprites from the original game, but then we're also doing this Ken Sugimoto style artwork.
And then it kind of like goes into a hybrid of that and like Spider-Verse looking kind of shit.
Yeah, and
And
Damn.
I just thought it was so
you
cool.
get to see the characters in the artwork that you see in the Pokemon mangas and like the old artworks and art pieces. That was so cool. Worth watching for the credits.
Honestly.
Out of 10.
Yeah, I'd say I still call it 3 out of 5. If you like Pokemon, you'll probably enjoy watching it just because it's fucking Pokemon. But I mean, it's not amazing. I do want more movies.
Yes. Licky Tongue looks terrible.
I I give it 2 out of 5. I enjoyed it. I also want more movies, but I also think this movie was just poorly executed in terms of its plot.
Can't
That's
wait for
like
the
my
next one. Can't wait
and
for
character.
Detective Dunsparce.
Postman Pokemon story where it's like a postman and he has a Growlithe.
Can we get just a Pokemon Snap movie? Can we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck it.
Hey, you
And
know
then
what? The first Pokemon movie had that Postman Dragonite.
Yeah,
shit.
That'd be a thing.
Well, all right. No Dragonites in this movie.
No Dragonites.
no, that's
0 out of 10.
no dragon types in this movie.
That's not true. I'm sure there's.
Was there a Dragon type?
You know what was weird? There was one Gen 7 Pokemon. It was Morlul.
I know.
But
We were the whole time. We were like, "Where's the Gen 7 at?" And
I
we
thought that
found
was
one.
interesting.
Yes.
That was a really deep pick. But you know what? I
know.
kind of like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for Detective.
What?
Joe, you're gonna tell us about something Dota 2 related.
Dota
I don't
2.
know what's going on.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I used to play a lot of Dota 2. And by I used to play a lot of Dota 2, I mean when I look at my Steam account page, I have a total of, give me 1 second. A B C D. Guys, I can't do the alphabet. Okay, when I say I play a lot of Dota 2, I have 936 hours of Dota
Jesus.
2 on record.
It used to
Jeez.
be like the most played game in the world, right?
Oh, the original one.
And then it was
Like,
League, and now it's Fortnite.
yeah, Dota 2 still has a really good following fan base. Um, so I fell off Dota 2 because of like, my friends kind of like stopped playing it because meta changes and just general like, oh, I don't, this character's not good anymore. A character I don't like to play, a character that I like to play isn't good anymore, or a character I really don't like got really good. Just kind of personal reasons. I still think the game is fine. Uh, it just it has its problems like every game has. But the big thing about Dota 2 that has always impressed me is its grand international event. Um,
Ooh.
the international event is the most well produced esports event like ever and currently, and probably for the future for a long time.
Hmm.
I don't know
Um,
anything about it.
okay, so here's the thing about the esports, the international. It's almost mythical about getting into it because there's no like ranking league system. You have to be invited by Valve to
Shit, that's
participate in this.
cool. Invitation only tournaments. Like,
Yeah,
Those
I
are
mean,
pretty
it's sad
good.
if you don't get invited, but like if you're in, like you're the shit.
yeah. And there are some like competitions that they usually give out 4 slots through like league play. Like if you win this tournament, you get a slot into the international. But
Yeah.
like there's still a lot of slots that they just like we want this team, we want this team, and we want this team. And we there have been times before when like really big popular teams have not been invited to the international, and really like kind of weird wild card picks have been invited instead. So it kind of it so like whenever it like goes in, it feels like a big kind of like event, and like it's just like, oh my god, this is crazy. um and you look at the stadium, and every time you see the production value, it goes up. I think they've added in like holographic projections of all the
That's so
uh
extra.
yeah, of all the champions when they get picked on stage. I'm waiting for the day when they're able to like show the whole map on like the floor, like anime style, and you can see the whole thing that's going down in that
Dual
stadium.
discs.
Yeah. Um, but this event is crazy because the people that broadcast the event are super professional when they do it, and they know what they're talking about, and they have 2 different streams. They have the professional stream, like the expert stream, that's like, all right, you know what Dota is, you know everything about it, you know like what the safe lane is, you know about pulling camps, stacking camps, ganking, like you know why butterfly is really bad to build and why only noobs build it, all that kind of stuff. Not butterfly, I'm sorry, divine rapier. Butterfly is really good. Build butterfly, but not before you buy boots. um
Sure.
but
Getting
Whatever
hot tips.
whatever you say, dog.
so the fact on that it's like this esport, I mean this event is like on the level of almost like football. Like it's essentially, to me in my eyes, the Super Bowl of like esport events. That's like how crazy and how like wildly popular this event is. Like there are people who don't play Dota that will watch this event because it's so hype every time it happens. um and like it's so good, and like even like you can like everything that's involved in this event is built into Dota 2, the game. So that's why it feels also so streamless when you watch it, like because the game has these components already built into it. There's not like a third party system that's streaming it for the audience or for Valve. The game itself was designed to be an e-sport, which is really cool. uh but the thing that makes the international super good is the battle pass. What the battle pass is essentially your digital ticket to the international, even though the international is free. Which you're like, why the fuck would you buy a
Huh.
ticket to something that's free? I'll tell you why.
Tell me,
Number
Joe.
one, cosmetics. When you buy the battle
Oh.
pass, you unlock cosmetics uh, for the different heroes in the game. All the heroes are free in Dota, by the way, so it doesn't matter like what cosmetic you get. You can always use on that hero because that hero will always be available. Doesn't matter, whenever. But the thing about the battle pass cosmetics is that they fundamentally change all the animations of your character usually, or at least 1 or 2 of the animations or attacks of your character. So like you have a very like it's not like, oh, it changes the color. It literally will change like the theming of a character's attack, or it will change the way that the characters like talk or interacts with other characters. It may change its voice. It may change its entire costume or its demeanor or
That
whatever.
that's like a League of Legends legend skins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all on that like level
Damn.
essentially. You get like 12 of them in them if you buy the battle pass. Uh, and the battle pass comes into certain tiers. Um, where and like so you get like a set amount. There's like 12 of them in total. I think you get 6 for sure. I can't remember. And then as you level up your battle pass, you get more. Um, and you can level up the battle pass by either playing Dota during the preseason of the international and while the international is going on, or by just buying more Dota points or whatever for that battle pass. Um, so it's like, wow, okay, so Valve, Valve, takes your money and uses it to fund their game. Yeah, great. Wrong. The battle pass is used to fund the tournament prize winnings for the international.
I like that.
And
Um,
let me look up the last international.
so while you look it up, Capcom does something similar with the Capcom Pro Tour. They put out this badass stage um, every year for the Pro Tour, and if you buy it, you get a couple of costumes. You get the stage. You can only get the stage if you buy this pass. And the problem is some of the proceeds, like half of it, goes to the Pro Tour. So it's got its kinks and its problems, but yeah, it's really cool idea.
Yeah. So I looked up the uh so there's a base prize pool, and then from that base prize pool, a good percentage of the battle passes that were purchased or upgraded is then added on to that, and whatever that amount is by the end of the tournament is how much that prize pool is going to be. So take a guess of what you think the base prize pool is for this tournament.
To
Hundred thousand.
100,000. Ooh,
Ooh,
Would y'all say 100,000?
yes.
yeah.
That's
It's
a lot.
1.6 million.
Jesus.
Ah!
I
That's
feel like
the
whenever I
big.
hear about a big video game tournament, the big prize is 100,000.
A hundred
That's
thousand was even a lot. I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Jesus.
base prize pool. Like literally like Valve. That's all the money. That's the
Fuck.
only amount of money Valve is going to give like from their pockets to the players if they win.
Shit.
How much
Guess
is
how
what?
much they. So with that in mind, guess how much the total prize pool was after all the battle passes were bought.
13 million.
3.2 million.
23.9 million.
Fucking shit. How did we lowball it again?
Oh, I thought I went too much
Like
again.
yeah, this like that's how big this event is. And like it's crazy, and the game itself is beautiful. The only thing I have about the game is that it's hard to follow sometimes if you don't know the characters. But this international is such an event, and every time I see it come up, I want to play Dota 2 again. It's like the best marketing campaign they've ever done, because you want to be it's something you want to be involved in. It's something you want to participate in. You want to pick your and like in addition, there's like a gambling aspect to it where like you get to choose like the team you want to win. You get to choose the player you want to have the best KD ratio, the
That's
player with
always
the most
fun.
sports stuff. It's almost like a digital festival that's
This is
happening.
all involved in this battle pass.
Yes, it's all involved in the battle pass.
So
Like
did you buy one, Joe?
No, I didn't, because I haven't been involved with like Dota for a long time. Like I think 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like it's like I don't know any of the teams. They're so different from what they were when I used to play, and even then I didn't really keep track of it. So like the base battle pass is like $10, and that unlocks the kind of your participation into the events. It then goes up to a little 50 battle pass, which is about the halfway mark at $30, and then the level 100 battle pass, which is essentially like you have basically everything, but you can keep leveling up to unlock some more stuff at $45. So and then from there you can purchase more battle pass like tickets or points for it. But yeah, it's something that you like when it happens, you want to be involved in. You want to see what's up. You want to pick your team. You want to root for that one hero that you really like. It's just kind of it, and you feel like you're part of this huge event while you're just sitting at home on your computer. But yeah, like it's a cool little event. You should check it out and kind of see what it's all about. You can check it out by downloading Dota 2 or Dota 2 and checking out their streams on there, or going to twitch.com and watching their streams. I don't know when the actual competition starts.
I'm sure I'll see it on
But
Reddit.
yeah,
It'll
it,
pop up.
yeah, but no, it's like no other esports event. I can tell you that. It blows everything out of the water. That's why I never watch anything else, because it doesn't compare.
Hey, watch Evo though. It's good. Fighting game's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that good
Yeah.
for Dota and the battle
Hmm.
pass? Cool.
Yeah.
Oh god. All right. So next up, I watched. I scratched some more movies off my to watch list. But this time it was only two, as opposed to like, whenever I,
17.
yeah, whenever I decide to watch some movies, I do like six. I do like, I pick a weekend where I don't have anything going on, and I watch like 5 or 6 movies that weekend. Um, so this time I watched The Florida Project, which is a 2017 movie. Uh, this movie made me feel some really complex emotions. It it's kind of hard to describe. So The Florida Project is a movie that, so it follows. It takes place in a project in in Florida, so like a low income housing. I
All
think
right.
you can even rent a room overnight. I didn't know that's how they worked. So it kind of functions like a pseudo hotel, I guess. Where
Yeah.
I guess the residents are paying for their houses by week or something.
Hmm.
Which actually fits into the plot. And a big chunk of the movie follows the shitty kids that live in the complex, and the mother of these kids don't ever stop them from just raising hell. So they're just super annoying, super badly raised kids, but they're also really intelligent and street smart. And Willem Dafoe plays the manager of the complex, and he's just doing his best to keep it together. Usually, you see him in like a nefarious role, but he's just so sweet in this movie, and he's definitely the best part of it.
Hmm.
And the movie focuses on this little girl whose name escapes me right now, and her mom. So this mother is where the complex feelings come from, because she's just a terrible mother with just terrible parenting, but she really cares about her daughter. So picture this trashy, like 20 something, maybe early 30s at best, uh, a young mother. I'd say she's probably in her mid 20s. And she's just a brat. She's super immature. She's super, like, genuinely trashy, and she's taking care of this daughter, and she lets her daughter do anything, and she sets a really bad example for her daughter, where like she has the daughter go uh she has a friend who works at like a Waffle House, and she has the daughter go there like every other day to so the friend can like sneak off some free waffles for her, like. And if she doesn't get her way, she'll bitch and scream and throw a tantrum, and she scams people by like buying, like, selling these shitty perfumes in front of like established businesses. And at one point she like steals a guy's Disney pass, because it's in Florida and they're like right next to Disney. That's a actually important part of the movie.
Hmm.
Anyway, she's just terrible, and she's just scummy, I guess is the best word I wrote that in my notes as like scummy mom. She just schemes her way through life, and you feel really bad for the kid because her mom is so kind of shitty, but she also loves her, and the kid is happy. So I guess I don't know how you're supposed to feel at that. It depicts this really good image of like poverty, and yeah, it's just a really good movie. It goes directions I wasn't expecting. The mom really goes pretty hard to provide for her daughter, but it's still like a scummy mom, like I said. So the climax of the movie is really emotional, and this probably has the most jarring ending of any movie I've ever seen. Eh, do y'all care if I mild spoil this
Yeah.
ending?
I
Go
will
ahead.
survive, I'm
Uh,
sure. And then you're
even
gonna tell
though
it to me, and I'll be like, "Oh, I wish I didn't hear that."
I feel like Bradley would enjoy this movie and not Joe. So there's that. So
Mhm.
near the end of the movie, can I? I'm trying to see if I can talk around this. It basically ends with the little girl running to say goodbye to one of her friends, and it's like, this is the last time I might ever get to see you. And it's like she's crying, and the camera is close up on her face, and it's devastating. And the little friend grabs her hand, and they run to Disney World, and the camera, like the way the camera is filming, it switches to a handheld camera, and they just run into Disney World and you never see them. Or is it Land that's in Florida? Joe, you're the Disney expert.
It's Disney World.
Wild.
And that kind of fits like this theme of the movie where like the kids kind of at the end they run to a fantasy, but in the end they still have to go back to their reality. Really good movie. I give it a 4 out of 5, and that's all I got to say about the Florida Project.
Okay.
Speedy
Meanwhile,
reviews. So next,
we'll go back to Disney World later and Pet Sematary. But yeah,
Pet Sematary is after this next one.
I know.
Which is I also watched Vice. Came out in 2018. It's a film about the life of Dick Cheney, former vice president of the United States under the George Bush administration. I'm sure everyone here is acquainted with him, and if you're too young, you can look him up.
Why
He
the
was
fuck are you listening to us? Go back down.
we say bad words. You really shouldn't. So this is like a really cheeky, fun look into the stealth leader of the United States for a while. So I'm just gonna preface this by saying I didn't look up the accuracy of this movie. The movie says they try to be as accurate as possible. So anything I'm gonna say about Dick Cheney right now and his doings and George Bush and Dick Cheney's wife, they're all based on the movie's portrayal of them. And if you come up to me and you say, actually, that wasn't accurate, I'm not going to fight it. I'll believe you. I'll look into it. This is just based on the movie, this is what I get. So it shows how Dick Cheney, he starts off as like this college frat star who doesn't do shit. He's in Yale and he only got there through connections, and he flunks out. He gets super drunk and gets caught driving and gets like 2 DUIs. And he somehow climbs his way to assistant of like a powerful man, and then he climbs his way to assistant chief of staff, and then to congressman after that. And he runs in the Nixon campaign, and who's after Nixon? The big Republican after fucking Reagan.
Yeah.
So he's in all those campaigns. He's in the background. He's steadily rising, and it touches into some really interesting things, and like why Cheney was such a good politician. You kind of have a lot of sympathy for him early on, where you can see he has good intentions, and even like in his first few jobs, he's like, what do we believe in? Because he's seeing how like corrupt his mentor is, and his mentor just walks away laughing. So the point is, you just don't believe in anything. You kind of lie through your teeth, and you rise up, and you do what you think is best for the country. And you can see a lot of his decisions are the decisions of a guy who thinks he's doing the best, right? So, for example, he uses Watergate as an opportunity where any Republican touched by Watergate is fucked, right? But Cheney wasn't, so he gets like his old mentor who he hadn't worked with in a while, and they get to ride that wave as the only clean Republicans kind of thing, and that's how they make it into Congress, I believe, is how it went. And then like during the 80s, there's a boom of Republicans that like save the image from the Watergate scandal, so Republicans are back on the table, so to say. And it's just, the whole movie is told in a really fun way, where it doesn't take itself too seriously, which some people, I went up and read on it. Some people don't like how the tone clashes from like funny to serious. I thought it made it for an enjoyable way to tell this movie, where like midway through the movie, Dick Cheney makes a really important decision, and the shooting the guy in the face comes after. Basically, one of his daughters is gay, and he's like, if I run for president right now, I believe it was president, that's going to be a problem because my daughter just came out as gay, and they're going to attack me. So either I have to denounce that while I'm running because I'm on the Republican Party, or I'm not going to run. And surprisingly, he doesn't run. He does the right thing. And then the movie is like, Dick Cheney then went on to manage his oil business and raise Labradors with his wife, and everything went well, and credits are rolling midway through the movie, and then it dials it back. And while he did do the right decision for his daughter, he then got brought back into the game because George W. needed a senior guy on his side, and that's how he gets roped into that. And then there's like this scene that's told in a Shakespeare soliloquy. And then when he's meeting George Bush, this movie portrays George Bush as the biggest idiot. It's Sam Rockwell plays George Bush, and he's so funny. Um, and while he's meeting him, he's like, you can. There's like a voiceover for what he's thinking of while he's meeting George Bush, and like you get to see into his mind and stuff like that. It's told in a fun way like that. But then 9/11 happens, as it does, and the tone takes a darker turn. Cheney, like, oh my god, it's so like shit gets so complex around 9/11, and it's kind of crazy how everything turned out this way. Where you're like, Cheney really is scared, like he's visibly shaken in the movie as 9/11 happens, and his wife asks him, "Are we at war?" And he says yes. And she asks, against who? And Cheney doesn't know how to answer that. So you can kind of. That's one of the problems I had with the movie. They kind of rushed this part really fast. Because at this point, the sympathy and the motive, like the sympathy you've built up to him as like just kind of a sleazy politician, but he had his heart in the right place. It all kind of goes downhill from here. Because he's like, okay, we need to interpret the law so that the president can do whatever he wants, so that he can send troops out to fight this war. And then the public, they did a lot of tests with the public, and the public wasn't liking the fact that terrorism is a nebulous threat. They had to pin it on a country, and they could have pinned it in Iran, but Iran was a fucking, what's it called? They were an ally, and Cheney was in an oil business, and Iraq had a bunch of oil fields. So there's this kind of like, we're gonna find this link. We're gonna find the tiniest possible link to 9/11 and Iraq, and we're gonna use that link to convince the public that we need to go to war against Iraq, because the public would rather us go to war against a country than an anomalous terrorism. And because he does this, he inadvertently gives another guy power, and that's how ISIS is made. So it just becomes the craziest mess. And he wages this war in Iraq for like these nebulous motives and with these skeezy ways. And it's really fascinating. I'd also give this one a 4 to 5. I know some people have problems with the tone. And even I have problems with how they pace some of his motivations. But yeah, that's what I got to say about Vice. I think both of you would like this movie.
The way you describe it reminds me a lot of The Big Short. I don't know if you watched that.
It's the same director.
I remember hearing about that.
I think I'll probably like it because I really like The Big Short.
I haven't seen The Big Short. Maybe.
Oh man, it's real good, and they sit down and they really lay out like, this is what happened during the housing market crash. Like, this is why this happened, and they do a lot of fact checking, and they do it in a very like it's a black comedy, which I feel like Veep it.
Mm-hmm.
Not Veep.
Veep is that. Yeah, Vice is a black comedy. I'd say that. Yeah.
Yeah, Vice. It it puts a humorous spin on a very serious and subject that affect a lot of people.
The funny part about him shooting that guy, speaking of that, is like, this is already in his downward trend, like his bad arc, and then he never apologizes for shooting the guy, and the guy apologizes to Dick Cheney instead. So yeah. It's just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I think that happened in real life too, if I remember correctly.
God.
Yeah, I probably will check it out when I can.
Good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Bradley, were you gonna say something, or are we good to move on?
No, I'm
all right.
I'll just listening.
Thought I heard you. Okay.
Let's talk about
okay. Next up, Bradley finished Pet Sematary, and he's got some things to say.
Yeah. So let's do a refresher. So to not spoil Pet Sematary off the bat, like, just give me your score about after you've read the whole thing. Like, what's your score?
After I read the whole thing, I'll probably end up with a 3.5 out of 5, which I would like to remind people is like that's an upper half score on a scale of 1 to 5.
Yeah.
I
would probably give it a 4, but I would really think that I would say that it kind of the 4 is mainly gained from the first 2 parts of the book, and the third part kind of just happens.
100%. I, I
And yeah.
I really feel like the third part of the book, our climax, is the weakest part, which it's really sad for a climax to be the weakest part.
Mm-hmm.
Part two, holy shit, was amazing. That's part two is where we get into like the meat of what's going to happen. It starts with, as we said last week, the family member dies. And then a lot of that part is like as soon as part two starts, you know, like what is going to be the climax, like what's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen. And this is some of the best anticipation building I've ever seen in a book.
Ooh.
Like you know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Um,
the ending of part 2, where so let's go ahead and get into spoilers, I
yeah,
guess.
spoiler.
So
Wee woo.
Wee
woo,
woo wee woo.
woo. So Gage dies, and Lou decides to go back to the cemetery after sending his family away and sneaking off in the middle of the night, and goes and digs up his son to bury him in the Mimmac graveyard where things come back to life.
Yeah,
And the scene, like right where part 2 ends, and you and like it like where like it talks about like there's a small thing that comes in the room, like opens the bag and pulls out something. It just sends goosebumps up my spine.
the
Just like, oh
entirety
god.
of part two, like I said,
Yeah.
it is just like the best anticipation building I've ever seen. From the moment Lewis starts deciding he might want to do this, to him deciding he wants to do it, to him formulating the plan, to executing the plan, to walking to the graveyard, to actually doing it. All of that, I was like, "Holy shit!" Like you're just on the edge of your seat or wherever you are while reading this.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, I was just like so hyped. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be amazing." Um, but I feel like that anticipation was much scarier than the climax itself, which you
Mhm.
would imagine being the scariest part.
Well, a lot of
Yeah.
times I feel like the build up of anticipation is the true horror in a lot of ways.
And I agree with Willer. It's usually the buildup of someone getting stabbed is more terrifying than the actual stabbing itself.
Yeah, it's really strange though. We talked about last time where I feel like the scariest parts of Pet Sematary, the true horror, is the parts that are real, and just kind of that existential horror of things that might happen or what could happen. Um, Family members dying, um, and kind of the horror about how you might feel about their death. Like, oh, if this person died, would I be fine?
Mhm.
And if you think you would be fine, that's a scary thought to have.
Yeah, like
Or,
then you just have this thing of guilt of like, oh, am I a terrible person because I know I'll be okay without this person?
yeah.
Like it's just
And so it's kind of weird because that's what I think the true horror is for most of the book. And the climax, where I think we've already said, okay, this is spoiler territory.
yeah.
You know, Lewis finally buries his son, and his son comes back, and his son is like this demon, like, oh, I'm gonna fucking kill you with a scalpel and all this
Mhm.
stuff, and it feels, I don't know, it feels really weird to me, and it's not as scary as I feel like
Yeah.
it's intended to come off as.
So I kind of liked what was going on with Gage at the end. So near at the end of the Gage, at the end of the end of the Gage, at the end of the story, Gage comes back to life and essentially goes on and kills Judd, the neighbor that tells him about the pet cemetery,
Yeah,
Gage's father, and then attempts to kill Lewis. Um, but I like those two things, especially with Judd and Rachel,
yeah.
the other, because they aren't killed by Gage. They are killed by the guilt of the other person dying.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's very clear that
mhm.
while Gage is talking and doing these actions, it's clear that it's not really him. Like the
Yeah,
Gage we knew is gone. This is
yeah,
another entity, um, Oz the Great and Terrible, as you might
yeah.
say. That it's that like essence within the body that
Mhm.
you see of
It,
Gage.
and it's kind of like how like your guilt of like the metaphor being like the guilt of or the grief of feeling pain for this person that's already died and passed on and wanting them to come back can really tear you apart. like literally and
Oh yeah.
figuratively. That's kind of like the point of, because when you have a horror story like this, you have to have some sort of like metaphysical existential reason as to of how that relates back to a person. And that's what that is. It's like, oh god, this person has died. Like for example, Rachel is attacked by a being that claims it's Zelda through Gage, her sister,
Yeah.
and like she talked about how like my sister was terrible when she was dying. I'm glad she's dead, and like even though I feel guilty about it, and so it's kind of like that idea of like it coming back and tearing you apart. That feeling literally killing you on the inside and outside. Um, but I agree with you, Bradley, where it just kind of it didn't really have a very big uh like it just wasn't very God, I don't know how to say this. I don't want to say dramatic, but it just if it didn't fall flat either. It just happened suddenly. That's the best way I can put it. But I will say this is that Pet Cemetery is essentially like is a structured to structured recreation of a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yeah, it is a tragedy.
Yeah, in that you have Lewis, who's your kind of like not morally gray, but a person you can see who is a good person. You know they can do good and they set out to do good, but through their own ambitions or personal like fears, they end up making a mistake that ends up destroying themselves or other people that they love. Um,
Yeah.
and you see that when at the beginning, because like Lewis is very much like trying to do the best for his family, has his kids, and then like when Gage dies, he has this personal conflict of like, oh god, what do I do this? It's very Hamlet, where he's indecisive on what he wants to do, you know,
Yeah.
and then he finally makes the decision, and it ends up getting him. Ends up getting Judd killed, ends up getting Rachel killed, and probably ends up getting himself killed. Um,
Yeah. That's left a little bit ambiguous, but you
Yeah,
can kind of guess.
which is okay. Like it,
Yeah.
that's like, but you get the point of the story at that point. Once the story has reached its thematic end, it's okay if it ends
Yeah.
like that. I feel.
I think the conclusion part three could have I feel like part two is where the core message and themes of the book are built up the most. And I
Hmm.
don't know if three necessarily sticks the landing on all of them. I think
Yeah,
what it does the best is, like you said, kind of it does stick the landing on guilt and how that can just really destroy someone.
guilt and grief. Yeah,
But as far as some of the questions that the book explores, like whether or not death can be a good thing, or whether or not sometimes death is better. I don't feel like we came back to that at the end
yeah,
necessarily.
I agree, and I think part of that is like, um, one of the things is like Lewis sends his family away, and right before he sends his family away, he gets in this big fight with his father-in-law over the
Yeah,
death of his son. Like his father-in-law blames Lewis for this terrible accident for his child, like just a complete dick.
yeah,
Um, but then he immediately like not immediately, but a few days later, he calls him up and tries to reconcile the situation and apologizes and says like, "Hey, this is and it kind of shows that like, and for a long time, him and his father-in-law had this kind of gap between them, and so like when the father-in-law comes back, it's kind of like him putting out that peace bridge, and like really Gage's death is going to be the thing that potentially will drive them to have a more positive relationship,
yeah.
positive things coming from death.
This is a
Um,
thing that I took a big note on, and I kind of reread this part
mhm.
because we have two scenes within a chapter or two of each other that are basically flip flops.
Right.
At the funeral, Lewis is like, you know what? I'm going to extend the olive branch. I'm going to shake his hand, bury the hatchet.
Mhm.
And despite Lewis trying the best he can to, welcome Rachel's father, he is just determined to stay mad at Lewis. He hates him. He says all that horrible stuff. They fight. And then a few chapters later, we kind of have the reverse where, Erwin, Rachel's dad, is extending that olive branch. And Lewis is like, no, like, Lewis consciously decides he doesn't want to forgive him. Like, he
Mhm.
brings up that horrible checkbook incident
Yeah.
For the pure reason that he's like, oh, if I remember this, it's going to keep me mad at him.
Yeah.
And it's just like a really interesting flip flop. Lewis likened like whenever Erwin apologizes to Lewis, he's like, "Oh, this is just like what Rachel does. Once they get what they want,
Yeah.
then they come and apologize to me." Um, and on one level, we follow Lewis most of the time, we're like, "Oh yeah, that's probably what's happening." Erwin, he finally got what he want. Now this bastard's apologizing. But I think the reason Lewis thinks this is because he's mad.
He wants
Um,
justification for his actions at this
Yeah,
point.
like a more positive way to think about it is maybe doing a nice thing makes the other person consider, oh, maybe I haven't been so nice. Like I
Yeah.
don't
And
I
like,
don't think Irwin sat around waiting for Lewis to do this and then he's like, oh, then I can apologize after that. I just think that Lewis did this and then Irwin is like, oh, you know what? Maybe I've been pretty shitty. But of course, Lewis can't let go of this grudge, and so he interprets it in the worst possible way.
yeah. And I agree on that. And it's a good, and it's, he does a really good job of just exploring all the emotions everyone feels during like this grieving process.
Yeah,
Like and everyone acts pretty not justified, but very human in what they do.
yeah,
Like, it's like understandably, like this guy just lost his only grandson. Um, and it's just like shit. It's like, of course he's mad, and Lewis just had the shit beat out of him by his father-in-law about something he had no control of. Of course, he still kind of harbors a grudge, and so you kind of have these weird, not weird, but like you have these conflicting personalities, and like they're never in sync with each other, and like
yeah.
the death just complicates that more. Um,
And so, um, I guess if we want to talk about a different scene, shortly after that,
mhm.
actually, shortly after all the funeral stuff is settled, we get to what is the most compelling part of the entire book for me. And it's a particular conversation between Lewis and Rachel where he hasn't quite decided whether he actually wants to try to resurrect Gage yet.
Mhm.
Um, and he asks Rachel a few questions. He knows that when
Yeah, yeah,
something survived, it doesn't come back entirely right. It might be kind of dumb. It could be violent. And he's asking Rachel, and probably also asking himself at the same time, would you still love our son if, he never developed a mind past the mind of a 2-year old? Would you still love him if he was
if he
violent, if
couldn't,
he grew up
yeah,
doing horrible things? And that's a really hard question. And I'm not a parent, but I imagine if I was, this would be the most horrible, just horrifying part of the book. Even just asking yourself this question,
yeah.
like,
And that's the thing. It's kind of like you have to really think about yourself, because think about it this way of like deep down, like would you really be okay with your if God came up to you, like hypothetically God came up to you and said, like, if you have a child, he is going to be autistic, like he is
yeah,
going to be mentally handicapped, he's going to have struggles in schools, he's going to be bullied, like, are you okay with that? And like that's kind of, it's kind of like the flipping of, like, if you have a child that there is something wrong with him and makes his life 100 times harder, are you okay with him living that life? Like, would you give him that life?
yeah,
Even like, is that a selfish decision? Because then you're in this weird crossroads of, like, if I don't have the child, I'm justifiably saying that I'm not giving this child a shitty life. But at the same
yeah.
time, you're not giving him the chance to live. On the other
It's
hand,
impossible to really know what
yeah,
you would do. And I think that
it,
conflict is like I think that's the most powerful part of the book for me.
and it's and like I remember reading that, and like it's just like I like and having that thought process of I don't know, like I don't know if I could, like, as a personal position, like, say, like, it's like, well, your kid's going to come out and he's going to have no legs. I'm like, I don't know if, like, I want my child to have, I don't want my child to have no legs, but I don't know if, like, I could handle, like, dealing with that my kid has is a not like, a little bit behind, but substantially behind everyone else in terms of like everything they could possibly do, and like and those changes don't aren't small. They completely change a person and how they develop and how they grow and how they live in the society. And I don't know if it's like fair or not to make that decision for that child.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the book does a really good job of asking you questions of like, you know, like, would you bring your son back if he came back to life and he literally knew everyone's like deepest, darkest secrets and would tell them to their face in front of everyone?
Yeah,
Like,
like Lewis knew there was a possibility Gage would come back as just this monster demon thing that he in
mhm,
fact did come back as, but he still went for it.
yeah, and and another kind of scene that I really liked in the book was Judd explains, like Judd reveals there's actually been one other human being that was brought back to life that he saw, and it was,
Yeah.
I forget the guy's name, but he was a soldier that was killed in World War II. I think his name was Timmy,
Yeah,
and
Timmy.
yeah, and like he comes back to life, and he comes back knowing um, everything that every bad deed that people have done, and it was kind of a weird, like, oh god moment that, like this idea that our sins aren't just like tied to us, they inflict pain on everyone else kind of deal, and that you, like, just because you're ignoring them, that doesn't mean other people are ignoring them. And it was just kind of a weird thought that there's something watching you, and there's people know what's going on, even though you choose to ignore these things. People are aware that you have sins tied to you, you have bad things tied to you. And do you feel like you can live with that? Do you feel like you could live with knowing that someone else knows that you're this sinful?
Yeah, because everything that Timmy reveals about these people and the horrible things they've done,
Mm-hmm.
all these bad things they've done are things that they've done to other people or behind someone else's back who
Mm-hmm.
would be devastated if they knew.
With I think the exception of one guy whose wife, who he just told him his wife is just cheating on him.
Yeah.
But I think it's more of like, I think the point of that he was making is like, she's doing this, you're just refusing to acknowledge it. Like, you're denying yourself from this reality.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure there's a lot more to analyze in that scene, but I can't remember it fully because I think I read it at night.
Yeah, and there's a few more interesting scenes that
Mhm.
relatively short. I took some quick notes on them just cuz or like maybe some subtle things that Stephen King did with words.
Yeah,
Um that, I don't know if there's a whole lot of analysis to go through on them, but I think it'd be a disservice to not mention them at
yeah,
least. Like one thing I really liked that he did in this book is that before Gage's death, characters rarely, if ever, mention looking both ways before crossing a street, even if you can reasonably assume that they do that anyway.
yeah.
But after Gage dies, every single time a character ever crosses the road for the rest of the story, like it specifically pauses to mention that they looked both ways before crossing the street.
Hmm.
And like Lewis does it, Rachel does it, Judd does it, and I think that's just a really nice touch. It shows that it just shows that they learned from this experience, I guess.
Yeah, and like I think too, it kind of like, um it I think before that it also sets up this sense of dread, at least for me, because they talk about the trucks going by really fast, and every time someone crosses the street, it sends off this little panic alarm in me.
Oh yeah,
And then whenever they start looking both ways, it kind of lowers that tension down, because I think it's also a way, it not only shows like character development, but also a way of like relaying to the reader that like this isn't going to happen to anybody else, in terms that people have learned from that. So like, I'm not going to get you with that same trick twice.
yeah.
um
Um, I'm trying to see what else I have here. There was a really interesting bit of foreshadowing I noticed the very first time that Lewis went with Judd to the burial ground and they passed through the quicksand. Lewis is like, "Oh man, I would never take Gage down here because the quicksand is
yeah.
scary."
Hmm.
And epic foreshadowing to
Yeah.
when he takes Gage down to where the quicksand is.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fun. Um, Ooh, another part. I wanted to note this just because Lewis used a very particular way of saying this phrase. Um, Whenever he's going to the graveyard, there's kind of a moment of hesitation where he considers maybe not breaking in and getting Gage.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, the way he ponders this is in his mind. He's like, would not bringing Gage back from the dead, if I can, would that be killing him a second time?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I like that phrasing, killing him a second time, is that it reinforces to us that Lewis still holds himself accountable. He thinks he killed Gage
Yeah.
by not being fast enough.
Yeah.
So that was just a good way to just the way Lewis asked that question to himself is really telling, and it also raises a philosophical question for the reader. You know, if you could bring someone back to life with little effort, but you didn't, is that
Yeah.
just as bad or even close to as bad as
Mhm.
killing them? Which, that's another question where I don't think anybody can really know the answer.
Yeah. There's one scene that we didn't touch on and I'm not sure there's a lot to like go into it, but
Yeah.
there's one that happens. I can't remember precisely where it happened. I think it happens right before he goes to the graveyard, and it kind of solidifies on what he wants to do. And he's going through this like hypothetical situation, like he goes through all of Gage's life, and
Oh,
like
oh,
how
dude.
or and like how he goes like like he went to high school, he started dating a Catholic girl, he converted to Catholicism, he was on the swim team, and he had a successful life. At one point he and his son um lived at Disney World, and all this kind of like possibilities, and like it reinforcing and like really kind of showing the fact that kind of pushes um Lewis over the edge, and like kind of really hits it hard why Gage's death affected him so much, is that he feels like there's a lost potential for the son that he had, and
God, yeah. And it's
he feels
so
so
sad.
guilty that he feels so guilty that his son never got to live to up to his full potential in Lewis's mind, even though Gage could grow up to be this fat slob that just ate potato chips all day, but you know but it really hammers home that Lewis like just felt so guilty on the fact that his son died at such a young age and really did not get to live any sort of life at all. Like
Yeah.
he's
And like you
essentially a
said,
blank slate.
or like you were saying earlier, it's that guilt that killed Lewis
Yeah.
in the end.
hmm And but yeah, Pet Cemetery asks you a lot of good questions. I give it a 4 out of 5, like I said before. I think it's pretty good. I think it does a great job of like making you think about life, and like appreciating it, and kind of getting more comfortable with the idea of like death is just part of that life cycle. Um, uh, I just wish the ending was a little bit more. I just wish the ending or climax was a little bit more climactic, and I don't need like a big brawl. It's just something. It's just missing one thing, one or two things that I can't really pinpoint. It just doesn't feel as
Yeah.
satisfying as it
Like
could
it
be.
doesn't need to be a climactic brawl. I feel like we didn't have the emotional
Yeah,
climax that we were set up
that's the
for.
big thing, is we didn't have the emotional part where like you know where Lewis really gets to see what Gates become. He only sees the aftermath. He doesn't like see it physically or like face to face or
Yeah.
anything. Like it like Gates, like he never like faces his mistake. He only faces like the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So there's a million other things we could probably talk about this book.
Mhm.
I know we could. I guess for the sake of time, we can wrap it up. I think
Yeah,
you said 4 to 5.
yeah.
I'll go. I'll stick with 3.5, maybe 4, probably be higher. Um, if I think the climax was a little bit better, and I know we've already talked about like 3 times.
Yeah.
Pet Cemetery, I think the way you described it before was, if someone asked you if it was a good book, you'd say yes. But if they asked you for a
Mhm.
book recommendation, this probably isn't the one you'd throw out.
No, not unless
Um,
I knew that person like really kind of dug
yeah,
that existential or like topics.
yeah,
Because I feel like once again, it's not a supernatural horror book; it's an existential horror book. Um,
yeah. Very existential, kind of a thought experiment in some
mhm.
ways. So yeah, I don't know. Pet Cemetery, it happened.
Yeah. Next on my reading list, I'm currently reading Bakuman It's a
Ooh,
manga. When I finished it, I'll give my thoughts, or whenever I feel like I want to talk about it.
we are looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean,
Hey,
I could talk about it, in segments if we wanted, but like that's
We'll
the
go in
next thing.
chunks, possibly.
Yeah,
It's up to you. Uh,
yeah.
Pet Cemetery Part 2 seems really interesting to me, but that Part 3 is, I
Well,
don't
the
know,
thing about
man.
part three, the good and bad about it is that it's only 40 pages. So
yeah,
so
Oh,
it's like the very end of the book.
yeah, it's like literally like, oh, I might as well just finish the book now, and then you finish the book and you're done.
okay.
Um,
It's not that
yeah,
bad.
it's not like it's drawn out. It's literally like, and climax go, book's over. There's
Yeah.
nothing else to it,
It's
which
weird
is
because like
mhm.
as a whole, I gave the book 3.5 out of 5. If I ranked each of the three parts individually, part one would be like 3 out of 5. Part two would be like borderline 5 out of 5, and then
Hey.
part three is like 2.5. I don't know.
Uh,
And it's not because it was short. It's just because it lacked in kind of like gut punch at the end. I
Yeah.
felt that's about it.
well, in that case, Bradley, why don't you send us off
Oh
with one of
God.
your hypotheticals that you never come up with beforehand?
I actually didn't. Okay. Um, okay. Pick a fruit. Each of you pick a fruit.
Pear.
A pear.
Pineapple.
Ooh,
Pineapple.
bad
Okay.
choice. That's going up your ass, bro.
Going up your ass, Joe. There's a guy and he has a gun to
No.
your head, and he says, "If you don't stick that up your ass in 30 seconds or less, I'm gonna shoot you."
No pineapple
Do you
beverages.
even attempt it, or do you just let him shoot you?
I might as well just let him shoot me.
Uh, I picked pear because it's my favorite fruit. It's not the best pick for this, but I guess I could
Like it
attempt
kind of has a
it.
tapered end. You can kind of
Does
you
that
can
have
kind
to
of get
fully
it.
go in? Like,
Like it has to be able to.
sustain itself?
Yeah, like it should be able to stay in there.
Okay. I think I can.
Yeah, I think a pear's doable. Pineapple, I'd probably just let him kill me.
Should have fucking picked strawberry or something.
Yeah, strawberry or some shit.
Well, there we go.
There you go. Let us know what fruit you picked in the comments.
Please, we're dying to know. All right, bye bye.
Bye.